Hello, everybody. On this episode of One and Done, and on the next stop in our off-season summer road trip, we told our guy Eric, go west, young man. And go west he did, to the Mountain West, as a matter of fact, when he had a conversation with San Jose State Spartans head coach Tim Miles, a phoenix in coach form, if you will, for the way he's known for helping programs rise from the ashes. Coach Miles talked with Eric about his time in San Jose, including ups and downs in the Mountain West, thoughts on looking for leadership on a new look roster after wading through the waters of the transfer portal, and the role analytics play in his program. All that and more, plus El Capitan, Mike Holland, the captain of the green screen ship, joins me in studio to discuss the interview, and we give our thoughts on San Jose State and the Mountain West. But first, enjoy our sit down with San Jose State Spartans head coach Tim Miles.
Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
We are absolutely thrilled to be joined by the San Jose State Spartans head coach, Coach Tim Miles. Tim, thank you for taking some time and for chatting with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive into a little bit of your tenure here with the Spartans. I guess looking 2 years ago, this was a season that was a unqualified success. It was one that found yourself named as the Mountain West Conference Coach of the Year. Now rolling the clock forward to last season, and it definitely was one that had a few more challenges, right? So I wanted to kind of get from your perspective, like how do you go about navigating the ups and downs of just kind of the season over season success, and specifically looking to the season to come? What are some of the steps that you're taking to help kind of drive bounce back for the Spartans this year?
Yeah, 2 years ago, I had a lot of answers, right? I was a smart guy, and we won a whole bunch of games, and we had Omari Moore was Mountain West Player of the Year. We had more wins, I think, since in our program's history since I was in junior high. And I was wrestling when I was in junior high. I wasn't even into basketball yet. That's how scary that is. But at the same time, things change. And I think at the mid-major level, now the Mountain West, I think, is more of a high major basketball league. But when you look at this, roster stability, things are more fluid than ever. So, as we moved, we lost our starting center who went to Central Florida. Omari decided to go to the draft, which I agree with. He made the combine, the whole thing. Now he's in the G League. And, things change. And unfortunately, this year we were beset with about every bad break you could get in terms of injury, illness, you name it. Rob Viola was probably who was going to be our starting center, broke his foot, out for the year in October. And so we were a little thin up front. And then we lost a whole bunch of close games. And pretty soon you're saying to yourself, what in the world is going on? And, what's fascinating about any program I've ever been in, you get a few bad breaks, and inevitably you get to a situation where there's a crisis in confidence that the guys are, like, hey, is this? And unless in this conference and in major college basketball, you've got to believe in the system. You got to believe in your teammates, believe in yourself, and really move forward, because any, amount of very few errors can cost you a basketball game. You can go back and have a bad 3-possession run, at Utah State, you're getting beat. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a bit of a colloquialism, but it is a literal game of inches, right? Those margins can make a big difference, not only in how the season goes, but the sentiment and the confidence around the team. So makes a lot of sense. We're looking forward to a successful season upcoming. Coach, I heard an interview not too long ago where you mentioned KenPom. We at the One and Done show are a KenPom shop as well. We talk a lot of advanced analytics. So, hearing that, I wanted to get, your insights as to what sort of role advanced analytics plays in your game planning and your game preparation and your overall coaching philosophy. How do you use those tools, and how do you think about them broadly?
Well, it really started for me, and you got to help me. Now I've forgotten the author's name, but as soon as you said KenPom, it triggered the thought process. I don't think it was Dean Oliver, but Basketball on Paper, the book.
I love that book.
Yeah. What's the author's name? Do you remember?
I know it's Oliver. His first
Yeah,
name
it's either Dean or John or something like that. And apologies to him. So I read Basketball on Paper when 2002, 2004, something like that, right? And Rock doesn't read so good, so it took me a while. But when I look at it, it made sense to me to look at field goal percentage a different way. Because even today on today's box score, you get a general field goal percentage that doesn't include the effectiveness of the 3-point shot. I really was interested in that, and of course, turnover rate, offensive, defensive, rebounding rate, the whole things that went into with that. But really, to me, it came down to paying attention. Well, soon thereafter, I discovered KenPom's website. And I was on it right away and utilizing it. We were Division I independent at North Dakota State. So trying to get whatever information I get on whoever we could, was always interesting. So I always use KenPom. And, originally I found it was fascinating because, we would get, Fargo, North Dakota is a big media market for that area. And the NDSU Bison are a huge thing for that area. And I remember thinking, I could go pull up New Jersey Institute of Tech, not having them seen play, and I can tell somebody, they rebound the basketball really well. And this guy is going to hurt you inside. And if you foul this guy, he's going to make you pay. And sure enough, I hadn't even seen him play, but I could, watch, I could look at the KenPom site. You could figure out what's going on in a short amount of time. And so when all of a sudden your SID calls you and says, hey, you have an interview with these guys in 10 minutes, I seemed a little smarter than I really was, thanks to KenPom. So it started out like that, but I found it super useful preparing for opponents, self-scouting, evaluating ourselves, seeing who I am as a coach over the years and when I'm at my best and what's at your best. And I think that as you go forward, analytics, what I found is you can overdo it. You can do a paralysis by analysis with some of your players. You can, for instance, I remember I had a guard, Glenn Watson, at Nebraska when I was the coach there. And Glenn loved the 15-foot dribble pull-up shot. Like, he loved it. And so he and I made a deal. I'm like, hey, you can shoot one to get you going. But after that, I want that pull-back dribble into a three, dude. We don't want, all those dribble twos. And but, it can make a kid question his game, if you get him to overthink it. So I think you've got to realize how to marry it, to how you coach your guys, what really matters, and how you coach to that and how you use that information, because it can be too much. But at the same time, having, the explosion of analytics in basketball has been, baseball kind of had it down for a long time, and they were the kings of it. And I think quietly, I remember that the Dallas Cowboys used to do it in football under Tom Landry. They just didn't talk about it very much. The NFL is very secretive, of course. Those guys, I think they discovered every secret in the world, so they don't want to tell anybody about it, but that's okay. But for college basketball to see the numbers game explode the way it is, it's been really interesting. And now, that information is so relevant. But I'm still a loyal subscriber to KenPom. So Ken Pomeroy, here we go, buddy.
Absolutely. It is definitely a big part of our toolkit here at the One and Done Show. And like you said, right, using the analytics to color your approach and your philosophy as opposed to dictating it is a very difficult balance to strike, but it's one that you appear to strike masterfully. And as we mentioned earlier, Dean Oliver is the author of Basketball on Paper. Go check out his work. It is one of my favorite books on the subject matter. As we check in here with San Jose Spartans head coach Tim Miles. Coach, one thing that is going to be different in the upcoming season this year is your roster. There are going to be a lot of new faces via the transfer portal, via the high school ranks, right? So, kind of curious to get your perspective on sort of the macro level, right? Like how have you adapted to this new environment of player mobility where it is not uncommon for rosters to look very different year over year?
I grew up in the upper Midwest, and minor league basketball was a big deal. They had ABA basketball.
Absolutely.
And the Continental Basketball League, the CBA, was eventually kind of purchased by the NBA and became the G League, right? And so we had all this minor league basketball, and you'd see those guys. Dave Yeager's one of them, Eric Musselman and another one of them were out in our area in the Dakotas, and were successful guys and successful NBA coaches. But you'd watch, and it was interesting. They would put a roster together in 6 or 7 months, accumulate as much talent as quick as possible, and then it changes over. You keep 1 or 2 of those guys, maybe. Really, that's where we are right now too. We are accumulating as much talent as we can. I signed 5 guys late, 6 guys late. I'm sorry, 6 guys I signed late. I think the average age is over 22 years old. With multiple transfers now, being eligible if they meet the academic requirement, it's harder and harder for a high school kid to get in, unfortunately. I don't know if I love that or not. To see the development of a young person year after year after year after year, it's kind of the glory of being a college coach for a long time. That's not who we are. That's not how it works anymore. So I think that adjustment for me is just kind of considering it. And with NIL has been fascinating too. But, when I was an NEI coach in Mayville, North Dakota, we had not 3 scholarships for 15 guys, 14 guys. Some guys are getting $500. Some guys are getting $1,000, $2,000. Some guy got tuition and fees. How do you put a value on those guys? Well, that's really what's happening now, the same kind of concept. So I think I'm prepared for it. I think there's some adjustments, certainly some sadness to lose what I consider to be the college model, where that development of a program and of a player that you see year after year after year. I'm sad that we're losing most of that, quite frankly. I think you're looking at more of a 2 or 3 year life cycle for a player in a program. And I would love that to be more every day of the week, but I don't expect it.
Yeah, more and more, it seems like the players who started a program and stick there and work through that development are becoming a bit of the exception as opposed to the rule, right? So I think your gauge there is spot on. Speaking of this very different roster, there's a lot of buzz around the upside of many of the players you've brought in, right? We'll talk about Hall, Uduje, McClendon, right? Those are some of the headliners, but it's a very full class for you. So wanted to get your insight, like what excites you most about this incoming class, and who are some of the guys that you were looking to as leaders, not only on the court but also in the locker room?
2 years ago when we had this historic season, a lot of people made a big deal about Omari Moore and what we were what we're doing, and really we were 6th in the country in rebounding.
Right.
When you're ahead of Duke, right behind Kentucky and Purdue, by a fraction of a rebound a game, that's pretty impressive stuff. And somewhere where we had never been, and so I think the biggest thing we did is some of those guys you mentioned, Shaw Mario too, Sada Nagana, we fortified our front line. Our 3, 4, and 5. We're going to be able to defend better, rebound better, and now kind of I always say that when you start a program, this is my 6th head coaching job, and I believe there's only 3 guys in the country that have had 6 jobs: Steve Alford, myself, and Rick Pitino, who's had 7, I believe, college jobs. And so I've started over a lot, right? That's a lot of movement. But when you start over, the first thing you do, and now we do it all the time because of all the, transition in college sports. Every year you feel like you're starting over. So this is my point, is the first thing you do is eliminate losing. How do you eliminate losing? You can't win till you eliminate losing, right? You can't win until you just don't win. You start by saying, okay, we're going to defend better. We're going to contest shots. We're going to rebound the first miss. We're not going to turn the ball over. And we're going to take good shots, So those things have to happen. It's not really more complicated than that. That's the glorious part about this whole deal. So I think if you can start with eliminating losing, and that's what I think these guys do. They're older guys. They're super competitive guys. And they understand that. So when you're coaching them the first day in practice, there's certainly an acclimation to system, but there's not a learning curve to work, to competitiveness, to understanding how hard you got to go every day. And I'm really excited about it.
There's certainly a lot to be excited about. We are sitting down here with Tim Miles, head coach of the San Jose State Spartans. Coach, you kind of mentioned this off the top in terms of the strength of the Mountain West. I kind of want to double click there. This is a conference that you're familiar with, going back to your earlier stops in your career playing and coaching in this conference. Looking at the Mountain West from last year, this is a point where you guys got 6 teams into the tournament. It feels like the arrow is pointing up. We love covering Mountain West basketball here on the One and Done show. So I'm wondering if you're noticing a bit of a change in the perception around this league, because for our money, the quality of play has always been there, but whether or not the conference got the recognition was another thing. So are you noticing the tide starting to change on that front a bit?
It's funny. I think the Mountain West, when I was in it from 2000 at Colorado State, when I was the coach there, right. Yeah. Before I went to Nebraska, it was, I think we put the year after I left, they put 5 teams in the Mountain West or in the NCAA tournament. The year I went to the NCAA with our 2011-12 team, 4 teams. The year before, I think we put 4 teams in. So it's been a league that has put 3, 4 and more teams in. Historically, we put more teams in the NCAA tournament than the Pac-12. In my 8 years, we put more teams in the NCAA tournament than the Pac-12 put in the NCAA tournament. It was a better league than the Pac-12, right? Hard to say that. Now, the problem is we didn't make, with the exception of San Diego State a year ago, we didn't make those big, deep runs. And so the success in the tournament is what lacked. And I think that's what people dismissed. Fair, not fair, relevant, not relevant, play at altitude, all those different, reasons, all some true, some not true. It's just a reason to kind of tear you down. Phenomenal league. Great league. 100%. Well-coached league. Great coaches over and over and over in this league. And just so fun to be a part of, great fan bases. And so, the Mountain West, I think when you look at it, last year, I think we won 73% of our non-league games. Not one team, every team had a winning record in the preseason, and when you look at that, you can say whatever you want about playing it out to we beat teams. We beat the right teams in the non-conference season, and we've done it. Now, could we have more success? Yeah. I think we could have had 4 teams win in the Mountain West. Nevada, Dayton comes back on a furious rally and has this huge, 17-point deficit and comes out at the end. Everything kind of goes wrong at the end for Nevada. We would have had 4 different teams, I think, win in the NCAA tournament. So it's a great league. When I left and I was out of coaching, I was doing television for 2 years. I only wanted to come back to the Mountain West. It was the only, I had chances to go to other leagues, and I wanted to be in this league. And so I'm proud to be in this league, and I'm a happy guy to see this league continue to elevate and go higher and higher and higher.
Absolutely. And for the record, on the One and Done show, we very much so categorize the Mountain West as a high major league. So I think that is earned. I think that we're finally seeing the national audience start to wake up to that reality. Last question here, Coach, before we get you out. Being that you have had so much roster turnover, wanted to hear from you, kind of speaking to the fans and the supporters of San Jose State. Like, what can they expect from this team in the upcoming season? What sort of attributes would you say that you're heading into the year aiming to kind of hang your hat on, or will be definitional for this year's team?
I think our fans will love this team. I think it's an older, more physical team. It's an athletic team. It's a Gator team. Get after their, right? So they're going to get out and hustle, scrap, and fight, and they're gonna appreciate that element, because these are guys that came in, and we don't have the best facilities in the league, and we don't have the best this in the league. But I tell you what, the guys that are here want to elevate this team, and they're all here for the same reason. They want to win. They want to take San Jose State as far as they can into postseason play, into tournament play, and go from there. And so I think that you're going to see a determined group that plays well together, that's really going to have a lot more synergy. We've got some guys that played high school basketball together, some guys that played AAU basketball together, that even though they're from different colleges, they know each other well. And so bringing in that type of chemistry, predetermined chemistry, I think is going to see a really cohesive team too. And you're going to see that matters.
Absolutely. A lot to be excited about here. Tim Miles, head coach of the San Jose State Spartans. If you are not watching what's going on there with San Jose State, it is absolutely a program on the rise, something very special that you are building here. Coach, we really appreciate you taking some time to sit down with us on the One and Done show.
Hey, thanks very much. And I can't wait to recirculate the show so everybody's watching One and Done soon.
Love it. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.
Let's go. Gotta love that stuff there from San Jose State Spartans head coach Tim Miles. Thanks to Coach Miles for his time and his candidness there. Quite a few times where I was like, man, that's great stuff there from Coach. Just offering it up. Feels like he's come back fresh, ready to rock. Amazing conversation with our guy Eric. I'm Jay Heinrich, your sometimes humble host here on One and Done. Find me on X at Dr. William Cannon. And joining me now to talk about that amazing conversation is the captain of this whole thing. Find him on X at MC Holland 34. That is Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, great stuff there from Coach Miles.
Man, the first thing that sticks out is sounds like a player's coach, like very humble, but brings a lot of energy. Like you could just tell with the way, him and Eric interacted throughout that whole thing, just how much energy he has. Love that he talked advanced analytics. That's something we always talk about on the show, so it's great to hear his point of view on that. And then he realizes, how much better the league has gotten, the Mountain West. I mean, we talked about it for the last couple of years, how strong this league has gotten. He's a part of that, obviously. And, talked about fortifying the front line. A couple of years ago, they had a really good season last year, some ups and downs. But talked about, really going out and finding that 3, 4, 5 spot and, wanting to get back to controlling the glass. So, I thought this was an amazing interview and tackled a lot of things that are going around, not only around this program, but along college athletics. So that was awesome stuff. Any takes from you?
Definitely some great stuff there. And sort of the questions that we all want to know. What are these coaches going through? What are they dealing with the portal? How do they utilize analytics? Like how many coaches candidly talk about having a subscription to KenPom, and using it to his advantage? Like it's real. And that's the time. It's easy for me to understand why guys like Coach Miles. It is very easy to see why he's a guy that can just take a bunch of dudes and rebuild a program and build it up and then just who knows where San Jose State's going to go. Again, like he said, he didn't beat around the bush. And he knew, okay, a couple seasons ago, he had all the answers. Like he said, he was the man, the king of it all, right? He's the man. And then all of a sudden, injuries happen and a few bounces don't go your way, and then of course now you're looking to build it back up. But great talk there from Coach Miles. Let's hop a little bit over to our thoughts on the program in general, Mike. Coach Miles hit a little bit on it, but what are your thoughts on San Jose State's program at the time?
Yeah, so a very, very tough Mountain West last year. Got 6 teams into the tournament. San Jose State only winning 2 games, but they had won 10 the previous year and finished 5th. So kind of funny how finishing 5th last year, 2 years ago, would have been good enough this past year. But he won the 2022-2023 Mountain West Coach of the Year award. You lose your, conference player of the year in Amari Moore, who spectacular college career. Obviously, those are big shoes to fill. And then, like you said, just a couple of bounces go a different way. I just felt like they couldn't get into a rhythm, especially defensively. So I'm looking forward to the roster, though. But any takeaways as far as like the analytics side of everything that he kind of talked about?
I'm fascinated by just his openness about it and just being willing to discuss that, because it's not even like a dirty secret anymore. Like we all know that this is a part of what college basketball is. And if you're behind college sports in general, if you're behind on analytics, you're behind in general. Right. Yep. So it's just refreshing to hear a coach talk about it in that regard. In terms of like KenPom metrics from last year, Coach talked about the Dean Oliver book, Basketball on Paper, which focuses on those advanced analytics. And our guy Eric's a big fan of that book as well. Dean Oliver came up with the 4 factors of basketball: effective field goal percentage, turnover percentage, offensive rebounding, and free throw rate on both sides of the court. So the Spartans were really solid at taking care of the ball last year, but during conference play, like basically offensively, they struggled. It wasn't too great, but defensively is where they were hurt the most. And Coach, he addressed it in the interview. It's like anytime in Coach Miles' career, anywhere that he goes, if defense is like even like just above average, like a good defense, he's pushed 18 plus wins everywhere. So if you get a defense out of San Jose State this season, it wouldn't surprise me to see them flip it again and go from top, near the top, winning 10 games or whatever, then 2, and then, find a way to do it again. But again, maximizing possessions, of course, is super important when you play a slower tempo like Coach Miles does. So you gotta take care of the ball and you gotta maximize those possessions. So Mike, what on this roster do you like to make a difference in all of those factors?
Yeah, I mean, I like what he's put together. I mean, yeah, you talked about, Uduje, Mountain West Conference 6th man of the year, and expecting him to have the ball in his hands a lot this coming year. So he's coming over. Donovan Yap, he's coming over from Fresno State, and he had a career year in limited run. So excited to see what he can maybe do in some expanded run. Will McClendon as a floor spacer coming in from UCLA. And then someone like Troll Mariel from Oregon State. I've always loved his game. He's going to bring that rim protection. So rebounding and rim protection is something that, Coach really mentioned. Once Amari Moore left, that was kind of some holes there he wanted to fill from that 3, 4, and 5 spot. I'm a big fan of Sadaidriene Hall's game. Like, he's coming over from SFA. The rebounding and inside scoring should be much improved on this team. And then McClendon and Yap, they both shot 35% from 3. So, when you play a slower tempo, you just talked about it, maximizing those possessions. He talked about, how much more the 3 ball is worth, that effective field goal percentage. And obviously you see teams that make big runs in the tournament have a high effective field goal percentage. So, seeing those guys coming in, it's going to be an entirely new look roster. For me, Uduje, I think is clearly the guy that can really be an alpha on this team. So we'll see how it all looks, right? It's all on paper right now. We have to play the games, but it starts defensively, like you mentioned it. Anytime he's had an above average defense, that team's been 18 plus wins. Controlling that glass, though, is very important for the San Jose State system for sure.
No doubt about it. Live chat, got a little action over there. Our guy Johnny K hopping in, saying he'd always liked the Spartans because it was his high school team name too, and even the same colors. Good stuff there. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, Johnny. If you're hanging out with us, if it's your first time watching One and Done, make sure you hop in that live chat. Say hey. Throw up an emoji, fire emoji. We like the fire emojis over here on One and Done for sure. Just say hey, hi, whatever you want to do. Hashtag Spartans, hashtag, drop it, whatever it is that you want to drop in the live chat. We would love to hear from you. And if you're watching this after the fact too, not live, but, over on the One and Done channel, hit those like and subscribe buttons over on Green Screens Media is where we're at on YouTube. Hit those like and subscribe buttons. Do your part in the Green Screens Media universe. But yeah, thanks for joining us tonight, Johnny K. Always good to see you. Let's move on now. With of course our regards to Coach Miles. Let's move on now to the bigger picture of the Mountain West. Quick Mountain West outlook here. San Jose State very much in play on paper. We talk about it. That's on paper, right? It's paper. It's May.
It's basketball on paper in May.
All right. Yeah. Basketball on paper in May. But Coach mentioned how many teams this conference can get in on a yearly basis. And if Mountain West gets 5 in, you got to think that the Spartans are in play for this. Okay, so you got Boise State, San Diego State, of course, New Mexico all look really good. And then you look at some losses, like Colorado State lost Isaiah Stevens. Nevada lost their backcourt of Blackshear and Lucas. Fresno State's got a lot of work to do. Not quite sure what we're getting out there in Vegas. Utah State and Wyoming are both going to have new coaches. It's not that far-fetched to think that they can get into that coveted 4th position. And if they do, Mike, they're probably a lock to get in.
Yeah, I would think that Mountain West is pretty much a lock to get 4 in from here on out. Obviously, we saw 6 last year. That was in obviously a ceiling type year for them. But look, it wasn't great seeing the Mountain West get underseeded, right? We kind of beat the drum on that one during the NCAA tournament. But how does the committee view what they did last year? Do they take that into account? Does that hurt the Mountain West at all? I think you have to look at what they did in the non-con last year. single game eliminations, right? Like, we like to, talk about the entire resume. When we get into anybody can win, right? And that's why these 14, 15, 16 seeds, can pull off miracles. It's not necessarily, exactly a tell sign of how they did during the entire year. So I think the Mountain West does have to perform again in the non-con. I do love what San Jose State looks like on paper. Obviously, injuries, things like that, how guys transition, how they fit together. When you bring in a new roster, we're going to see how the fit works. But just, watching that interview with Coach Miles, those guys got to be excited to play for him for sure. So, yeah, looking forward to another great season of Mountain West basketball for sure.
Yeah, we're really, we really had to pay a lot of attention to Mountain West basketball throughout the year. Just if we weren't talking DFS stuff, we'd be, even just as a college basketball show, you've got to talk Mountain West. There's just way too much good basketball being played out west for sure. Good stuff tonight. Thanks for Johnny K for hopping in. Even though he's a St. John's fan, still coming out tonight on the San Jose State show. We appreciate Johnny K. We appreciate all the breadheads in the Green Screens Media universe for sure. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons and turn on those notification bells, because that summer road trip that I mentioned earlier in the show, it ain't stopping in San Jose. I promise you that. Coming up later this week, our conversation with Coach Herb Sendek. That is right, the Santa Clara head coach. Got a few minutes with him. That's coming up later this week. So make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons, turn on those notification bells. Thanks again to San Jose State head coach Tim Miles. We love the time that he spent with us. We love the energy that he brought. We know that he brings that energy to his program all the time, and we're looking forward to some great stuff out west from him and his program in the upcoming season. Thanks for hanging out with us. Leave us a comment, hit all those buttons for us. And until next time, take care of yourselves, each other, mostly yourself, though. Make sure you take care of yourself. Tell somebody you love them. We'll see you next time. We'll see you.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drrodo.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.